Okay, we'll go ahead and kick things off. Hi everybody. I'm David York. I'm the Central and Eastern Kentucky Employer Coordinator, so I mainly talk to employers and whatnot. And welcome to our Monday night guest speaker. Before we get started, before I introduce CJ, I do have a couple of announcements. So we do have more guest speakers down the pipeline, including next week. We have Troy Kelly talking about ChatGPT and prompt engineering. So that should be pretty interesting. And after that, we have Matt Overwine in digital product design. So we have a couple more coming down the pipeline too. Pretty interesting things. Definitely stay tuned for that. Careers team, which I work on, is coming up with more events all the time, demo days, hiring events, these Monday guest speaker events. The best way to stay in touch on those is stay posted in Slack to announcements and the Tech Careers newsletter. That's the best place to stay up to date with all of what we're doing. And if you are part of a module right now, make sure to fill out the Google form in your Google Classroom so you can get credit for attending this tech event. Want you to have credit if you're going to come and listen to some interesting stuff on AWS certifications. Quick reminder, just make sure to keep yourself muted, and you will have time for Q&A at the very end. You can use the chat if you do have pressing questions. But other than that, we are joined tonight by CJ Taylor. So CJ Taylor used to mentor for us in Code Louisville. He did so for quite a while and started around 2015. So he was part of the program when it was in its early stages. He currently works for Amazon Web Services and actually builds these certifications. So he knows a thing or two about them. And with that, I will give it away to you, CJ.
David, thank you so much for the great introduction and the announcements there. Hi, everybody. I'm CJ Taylor. I'm based out of here in Louisville, Kentucky, or Louisville for us locals. I will be on camera just briefly for this intro. I'll go off camera and we'll go through the presentation. I've got about 20 slides to share with you. Don't fret about looking for all of the resources I'm talking about. I'll be giving you a list of links and some resources at the end, followed up with a survey. So with that, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. I anticipate we'll probably get through the slides in about 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll have ample amount of time for some open Q&A at the end. So I'll go off camera and away we go. So hello and welcome. I'll start off with a fun brain teaser here. Did you know that 76% of IT decision makers are facing a skills gap when they go to hire and build their solutions? Hi, I'm CJ Taylor. I'm a solutions architect at AWS. I am delighted to share with you how you can build and validate your AWS cloud skills by using AWS Skill Builder in pursuit of AWS certifications. There is so much to learn about the AWS cloud and even for AWS certifications. So in today's session, I'm going to share with you briefly about AWS certifications, the value for you and the organizations that you either work with or for or might work for in the future, and how you can use resources to continue your learning journey through your career. At the end, I'm going to share with you a list of resources in Slack. I'm going to put it on the thread for the announcement for the session. And I'll ask also that you fill out a survey at the end. It is your ability with technology that helps organizations to innovate for their customers. Equipping yourself with the knowledge and skills can maximize your business impact and improve your job satisfaction. Even if you are early in your career or are further along, it is about having a growth mindset and establishing habits of continuous learning. 94% of IT decision makers agree that certifications help to close the skills gap. Think of AWS certifications as checkpoints on your learning journey. A certification is not the end destination. By preparing for and passing a 65-question exam, you can earn a 3-year certificate to share online and to list on your resume. There are 12 active AWS certifications that range multiple levels, such as foundational, associate, professional, and specialty. As an individual, I hear you might be asking, why even get AWS certified? AWS certifications give individuals like you and me the validation that we deserve of our technical knowledge and skills. 87% of learners say that being AWS certified improved their ability to innovate and develop on AWS. 84% accelerated their migrations to the AWS cloud, and 80% are able to identify and act on cost-saving opportunities when building on AWS. That last one is a very large thing for employers. They love it when their employees are able to naturally identify and act on cost savings opportunities in their solutions. Now, we're probably here thinking from an individual's perspective. How can I start my career? How can I further it? But I'd also like to switch the lens. For organizations and employers, we need to understand what they're looking for and how they're valuing this as well. So what is the value of AWS certifications for an organization or an employer? Organizations use AWS certifications to identify and to develop the right talent. They close the skills gaps and to win the trust of their customers. In a recent study of organizations on AWS certified employees, 91% of those organizations experience improved innovation from AWS certified staff. That's a huge differentiator. 86% have improved security of their solutions. I'm sure you watch the news and see interesting things related to security. That's a very large thing to say. 96% have improved talent retention by supporting their staff to get AWS certified. And 97% are in a better competitive position over the next 3 to 5 years. There are a variety of AWS certifications paths that you can take. I'll share with you a resource at the end that shows about 13 paths. Here on the screen, I have 3 in particular that might be of particular interest. These are aligned with the top cloud job roles and their responsibilities. For all of the paths, you'll notice the first step is the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. The AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner validates foundational and high-level understanding of AWS cloud services and terminology. This is a great starting point on your AWS certification journey. If you have 0 prior IT or cloud experience, or if you are switching to a cloud career, or if you're an employee looking for foundational cloud literacy, I highly advocate that you go for the Certified Cloud Practitioner first. Now, upskilling comes with many challenges. We all probably have faced this in organizations like Code Louisville and Code U. Knowing where to start, translating training concepts to the real world, even anticipating future training needs, or validating your skills and knowledge. Well, to address all of these challenges as you're pursuing your knowledge and skills in AWS, check out AWS Skill Builder. With AWS Skill Builder, which is a free service, you can access it for free, but you can subscribe to content. You can build in real AWS environments without concern of extra fees. You can take self-paced hands-on labs, enjoy game-based learning, dive deep into specific use case challenges, and you can validate your knowledge by preparing for the AWS certification exams. You can access AWS Skill Builder, and a lot of content is available in the course catalog for free. With a paid individual subscription, though, you get access to more content, more courses, the Builder Labs, enhanced exam preparation resources, more games-based learning, and so on. We're going to dive deep into each of these areas. 30% of IT decision makers say that they have not anticipated the skills that their teams need. Just think about that. You get hired into a role and you think that 30% of those decision makers that hired you don't know what you need to be trained on. That's a tough place to be. But with the course catalog and skill builder, you have on-demand access to relevant training when you need it. With over 600 courses, you can seek out specific training for scenarios that fit your needs, from the basics like what is the AWS cloud, to advanced concepts like how to build machine learning solutions or handling the computer networking aspects of your solutions. You can select training from more than 30 technical domains at the right level for you. Sorry, I checked the chat there. Hopefully we're not having a technical difficulty on the slides.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's more of a slide viewing format. If you can just adjust that, using the three dots as Troy suggested, you should be good.
Thank you, David. Moving on, knowing where to start and where to go can be tough. And that can take a lot of your time. That's very precious. That's where over 50 learning plans can help you. Learning plans simplify piecing together the right courses, labs, and exam preparation materials to remove the guesswork. There are both free and paid subscription learning plans inside of Skill Builder. Now, learning for learning's sake and memorizing things can take you very far, but 68% of learners say that hands-on practice is a must. And you've probably experienced this in your exercises with Code Louisville. You need to sometimes just build to start figuring out what you can't do, what you might need to ask questions about. Well, with a subscription, you can take over 125 guided, self-paced AWS Builder Labs. These Builder Labs include interactive exercises with step-by-step instructions where you can build an experiment in the AWS management console without risk of added fees. I'll repeat that last part because it's very important. I myself have, as a learner early on, have experienced this before. But again, you can build an experiment with the AWS Builder Labs without risk of added fees. You don't have to pay for the bill for all of that, what you spin up inside of the workload. Also, you have peace of mind. If you're employed, you have peace of mind that the learning that you're doing is not happening in your employer's AWS accounts right with their production workloads. Now, if you're like me, not all paths to IT are traditional, which is why many of us are here. If you're looking to have experience with business scenarios, technical aspects, and to gain hands-on experience, well, with the AWS Cloud Quest, you can simulate real-world scenarios in a 3D virtual environment. It's a game, and I've recently just played through the AWS Cloud Quest for the Cloud Practitioner, which is free. With Cloud Quest, you can learn the fundamentals of, say, the Cloud Practitioner to specialties in serverless, security, and machine learning. You get to have fun playing a game, and you just happen to be deeply learning the concepts that you need to further your career. Now, much of what we've covered so far is prescriptive. You're in lecture-based content or you're in very guided, interactive content. Maybe you're wondering at a point, how can you perform in an open-ended scenario with less guidance to solve problems? That's pretty close to the real world and what you might face in an interview or on the job. That's where you can enjoy AWS Jams. With AWS Jams, you face challenges that are real-world scenarios to check your experience and to verify your cloud skills in a fun and engaging way. It's a gamified way of solving problems. I think of it as like a digital escape room, but Jams cover solutions across practices like incident response, data analytics, compliance, AI, machine learning, and more. Back to that stat from earlier, 94% of IT decision makers agree that certifications help to close the skills gap. Validate your hard-earned knowledge and experience by becoming AWS certified. In Skill Builder, you can access the enhanced exam preparation materials, courses with practice materials, and the official AWS certification practice exams. These materials, they mirror the rigor that AWS places on their high stakes AWS certification exams. You can learn in a time-based mode, and you can get in-depth details on why in the exam prep materials, why something's right or wrong, with rationales to help you learn more from those questions. And then ultimately, all of that is preparing you to take and potentially pass an AWS certification. Once you pass an AWS certification, you get to showcase your capabilities with a 3-year certification where you can share it online and list on your resume. Now, for what some people have to share with you about their experiences, Andeal, an IT engineer in South Africa, they had the goal of becoming an AWS cloud architect. From their experience with AWS Skill Builder, they were able to access training on the go while in line to get their coffee. Skill Builder helped Andeal plan and to organize their learning. Another individual, Chris, a quality assurance test engineer in Texas, highlights from their feedback. They shared that they had 0 AWS experience before they planned to take the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. With the help of playing a video game, AWS Cloud Quest, they passed the exam, and then they continued on to pursue the AWS Certified Developer Associate exam. Now, similar to earlier, where I shared with you the value of to you as an individual of becoming AWS certified and then the value to the organization, let's hear from some IT decision makers about these solutions. Over at Citrix, a senior director of engineering shares that CloudQuest was a fun and exciting tool that allowed their engineers to practice and gain confidence with the AWS cloud. And then another director of technology over at the Zolero Group shares that the increased exposure to new AWS services is driving experimentation and innovation in their projects. Now, I promised at the start that I would be sharing with you some resources in the Slack channel. This is what you're going to see inside of Slack. I'll call out a few of these resources. So please do not worry about feeling like you need to be searching for these links. They'll be in Slack available to you. These resources include a few current promotional opportunities. For example, through September, you can get a voucher for 50% off on associate certification exams until also redeemable up till late November. You can get a 7-day free trial to a subscription level account in AWS Skill Builder. You can start and stop a subscription anytime that you want, and there's a lot of content on Skill Builder for free. And then also, specific to women, you can apply and join the Cloud Up for Her Cloud Practitioner, where you can go through a specific training program and get 50% off on your Cloud Practitioner exam. Again, I'm CJ Taylor. Thank you all so much for allowing me to share my passion of upskilling others. Please, I ask that you scan the QR code or visit the link that I'll provide with the survey so that you can provide me feedback on my presentation. So with that, I'll flip on camera and we can do some Q&A.
You guys can feel free to either type your questions in the chat or unmute and ask them.
I'll go ahead while we're waiting for questions. I'll go ahead and share these materials. And I'm going to do it on the thread. I will post it to the channel so it'll be right out there for everybody.
That would be great. Also, thanks everyone for all the help in troubleshooting the issues with seeing the slides. Really appreciate it. You guys are great. We do have a question on if the slides will be available.
Oh, my apologies there. I was doing some copy and pasting. I believe I caught the question. Will the slides be available?
Yes.
I will look into if I can provide a PDF copy of that. Let me get back to you on that one. I'm going to try, but I'll let you know.
Next question is, how long should one study the cloud foundations prior to the exam?
Well, that's very dependent on your ability to go through the content and your experience. You know, if you're already building, it's going to potentially take you less time. If you're going from zero experience, it could take you much longer because it might depend on you building some foundational knowledge on, you know, how computers work, and building up a foundation to go from there. There are ramp up guides that I share in the resources. You'll see it's the second to last bullet point, AWS ramp up guides. There's a whole list of those. And inside of each of those guides, you can find for a particular role and for a particular industry and so on. Eventually, you find a PDF once you kind of pick which one you're looking at there. And inside of that, it lists all of the different kind of training sessions, the exams, and so on, and gives you a time estimate for each one of those. So for a better estimate, I would recommend that you check out those ramp up guides to get an idea of what all of those pieces look like. But I'll take a moment here and say, in general, in the past, say that you're going for the cloud practitioner. I've often recommended learners, when I was a customer of AWS a little over a year ago, I myself was going through, I didn't have any existing cloud experience back in 2017. I had zero cloud experience. However, I started working through all of the certifications. I have all of the AWS certifications. And on average, I was finding that it took me anywhere from about 30, at the best case of scenarios, up to about 80 hours of focused effort and studying time to get anywhere close to passing one of the exams.
The next question James asks, and that is, what is the format of the examinations?
The examinations, the time depends on the level, but it's 65 multiple choice or multiple response questions. And any of the exams, that's what you'll see. The cost is a little different for each one of those. Those are on the website where you can see the preparing for AWS certifications. You'll find those details. The costs range from anywhere from $100 to $300 per exam. And that's why I share with you some opportunities to get some discounts on the vouchers. But the time range can be anywhere from a little over an hour up to close to about 3 hours to complete an exam. All of those details in specifics can be found on each exam's link, to where you can see all of the details and find exam preparation materials, and ultimately the exam guide that tells you what to expect. That's your syllabus, and that's your overarching guide of what could be on the exam. So if you read the exam guide and you read the mention about who the candidate is and the format and then the domains that it covers, they typically cover 4 to 6 domains. Below that, you're going to see a listing of the domains broken into knowledge and task statements to get in the granular detail. If you skim that potentially 20-page PDF for each exam, and you find something that you don't know what it is, that's probably a good sign that you might need to study some more.
Remember, you can also unmute yourself and ask questions that way. That is totally fine.
Hi, everyone. I have a question. CJ, so based on what you've told us, how many certifications did you get before you landed your first job?
Before my first job, I had 0 certifications. I've been in the industry for 15 years now, but I had a bit of a non-traditional path. I didn't do too well in school the first time around. I had to learn some lessons the hard way, and I don't have a degree right now. So I went a very non-traditional path, and I worked and I learned on the job. And I really wish I had something like Code Louisville whenever I was trying to get into the industry. That led me into actually mentoring for Code Louisville. But it was around about whenever I was mentoring for Code Louisville that I started my own back in about 2015 to 2018 range. That's actually whenever I started pursuing AWS certifications.
We have another question from Andrea. What is the difference between a developer role and a solutions architect role?
Great question, Andrea. Sometimes it depends on the organization and kind of their maturity on how they run their teams, their operations, and their workloads. And it kind of depends. But in general, a solutions architect is designing a solution. They tend to take a business problem and turn it into a high-level technical solution. And they can try to take constraints into account, like what are things built in now? What do we need to do in terms of long-term success? What can we afford to do? What can we do in terms of maintenance? And taking in all of those factors, you tend to go through multiple rounds of trying to design a solution to fit the problem and the context that that organization is facing. Now, a developer role tends to be a little more hands-on, getting into the details of how is that solution built and carrying out those solutions into being fully implemented. So you can sometimes, in some organizations, see a solution architect design a solution, and then a developer take that design and implement it in a general sense. That's not always true, but that in general is what you can expect to see as a difference between those roles.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, David. Hey, CJ. As somebody who is a kinetic learner, so when I did Code Louisville, I struggled a little bit when we were using Treehouse. Some of those lecture monotone, I couldn't deal with it. I did a lot better when I was in the rooms with the mentors and learning hands-on, but you be able to touch it. But somebody with my learning style, how would you say like the process is? Because I'm in medical right now. I've been doing it for 18 years, but I want to transition over to maybe cloud security at some point. So what kind of style would you think or track, I guess, would you say would be good for me to start with?
Well, I commend you, Scott. I know it's tough, and we all face struggles in our own learning, motivation, and so on. I myself have to use strategies to combat my own issues, and one of mine is much like yours. The way that I solve that myself is I go for the builder labs. I like being hands-on. Even though I'm now a solutions architect, I love playing digital Legos in the cloud. and I love building, and I love learning by trying, by doing. I can see the results right before me, or I can see the failures right in front of me of like, that's not working, and I wonder why. And the troubleshooting process, it has a shorter feedback loop, and that's what I like. And so for your, like, based off of what you shared there, I would highly recommend that you look into the labs. There are other resources that don't require subscription, but you have to build in your own AWS account, and then you would be on the hook for, paying for whatever you used that was above the free tier that, that's applied to your account in AWS. But there's Workshop Studio. You can go through and skim workshops that are in different domains. You can find more particular into security area, and just kind of skim those. But it sounds like you might be more inclined for practical hands-on experience. So Workshop Studio, you can skim those and see if that might be to your liking. I would say also check out the Cloud Quest for the cloud practitioner. It is free. So I really can't emphasize enough how much content is actually available for free on Skill Builder. And with the Cloud Quest, while it is a game, what it ultimately does is you end up having synthesized interactive communications with somebody that's a business person, and you're playing the architect or the designer or the problem solver. And then once you've gone through and had the exchange so that you can understand the problem, it takes you into a three-step process of plan, design, and implement. And you'll go through and break down and see interactive architecture diagrams that'll say what you're going to do and then walk you through it. And then you'll get to open right in an AWS account from that, where you get to build step by step, hands-on, doing the real solution. And then at the end, after going through the interactive part, it has a DIY, do it yourself step, where you take what you just saw, what you just did, extend it a little bit further, and then you click submit, and it'll actively grade it right there for you and tell you if you got it right or you got it wrong. But it's a really, really interactive, self-paced way that I've really enjoyed being able to go through and continue revamping my own learning.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure, Scott. Thank you for asking.
Ashley asks, what most common fields, specifically regarding our pathways, so data analysis, software development, and web development, is an AWS certification best suited for, or all of them?
Yeah, I will go back to a few slides. Excuse me as I transition through the slides. I mentioned 3 specific learning or certification paths. Here, this one here. While I didn't go into the details about each exam or different roles, I did that intentionally. There's 12 of them, and we could spend a full day talking about each exam. I really wanted to give you the resources for you to go learn more and figure out what might be your inclination and how to take your path. Specifically, here are 3 particular ones. I'll walk through the top 2 because I think they are. Yep, I see. Thank you there, David, for mentioning that, for pinning that. But Ashley, these are 3 out of 13. I can pull up the rest of them and walk through them, but I will walk through these 3 in specific since I have them here on the slide. But you need a base foundation to work off of, and that's why the cloud practitioner is first. And the solution architect, the one at the top, hopefully you can see where I'm hovering my mouse right now. The next step is an associate solutions architect associate exam. That's where you start getting into, I know the language, I know the tools, and now I know how to put them together. I know how to solve a problem. I need to know how to read a business problem and pick the right tool for the right job, and consider things like what's the most cost effective, what would be the solution that could work but had the least amount of maintenance to it. And so that really gets into testing your critical thinking skills and problem solving skills. The next step in the solution architect path is the professional. Now, that's very much like the solution architect associate. You're still playing digital Legos. You're taking an abstract business problem and you're grabbing the right tool for the right job, but you're getting more in depth in the details. And that's really testing your long-term experience and exposure to building with the tools. The questions can sometimes be longer and be more involved and involve a lot of additional criteria for you to be able to pick the right response. And so that really goes into depth. That is a very real world exam. I love taking that exam. I've taken it multiple times now, and it is humbling, but fun. So be mindful of that. That's why you can lean on the exam preparation materials to really spot check and take a sample of where am I at and where are my deficiencies. We all have a lot of learning to do, and we all have blind spots. And that's why we use diagnostic tools like those exam prep materials to see where we're at and see if we need to fill in those spots or if that's still the path that we want to go down. But to continue on the solution architect path there, it polishes itself off with, say, the security specialty. Specialty exams are very advanced as well, but they tend to be narrow in focus. The security exam goes into depth about how to secure workloads and end-to-end solutions. So that's a brief walkthrough through a solutions architect path. You asked about data analytics, and I believe also software dev and web dev. The next one would align, the software development engineer is going to align with the software dev and web dev that you asked about. The first one, of course, cloud practitioner, followed up with a different associate, the developer associate. The developer associate is very hands-on and is testing on code level details. You're not going to be asked to write code. It's still a multiple choice and multiple response examination, but it does rely on you to know a thing or two from having written code inside of AWS and using AWS tools. Continuing down that pathway leads you to the DevOps engineer professional. The professional exams, there's two of them. The solution architect associate, we spoke about that one, and now the DevOps engineer professional. That exam is really on your ability to automate solutions. You've got a background in writing code, and you need to automate end-to-end, say, development or deployment pipelines, conveyor belt systems that take code from its written form, package it up, and deploy it, and then test it along the way. It tests your ability to do things like scaling and so on. Gets really into the depths and details of automating solutions. So I believe so far, Ashley, I've answered probably 2 out of the 3 paths. Data analytics is one I don't have on this slide. It's specifically available in this resource. Oh no, it didn't copy. Tried to paste it in the chat there. But there you can see the full PDF of all of the certification paths. And excuse me a moment as I'm scrolling through that. There is one in particular in there, a section for data analytics, and it goes through a cloud data engineer. Ashley, would you like me to share that, or are you happy to go through that PDF and look through that one? Excellent. Well, thank you for asking, Ashley. It was a great question.
Scott has a question. So do you have to be in your role for a certain amount of time before you take the test for the different tiers, or how does that work?
So Scott, I'm hearing that you're asking if there are pre-requirements to each exam. So no, there's not. If you really wanted to, you could go and schedule the professional exam and take it from home or at a local test center. By the way, there's 2 modalities. You can take them at local test centers. I used to take them over down at JCPS. There's a test center down there. You can find those nearby you online. But then I think the other 9 that I took them all from home over the past years. But there are no pre-requirements for you to register sit for, and take the exam. Now, you are paying money for these exams, so you probably want to make sure that you're using that money wisely and being prepared once you go in there. There is a retake policy. It will notify you of those details. There is a bit of time that you have to wait. I apologize, I can't recall that off the top of my head, but I think it's within days. I don't think it's months or years or anything of that nature, but you just have a period of time that you do need to wait. I think it might be 2 weeks. Please don't quote me on that one. But I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. But if you sign up for and take and you don't pass it, then you can retake it another time. There are no hard pre-requirements to access any of the exams. There used to be, but that got removed due to customer feedback.
So the next question comes from Andrew. And so chime in, Andrew, if I don't fully understand what you're asking at the very beginning, but at times he needs excess VM capacity and use EC2 instances to cover capacity needs. Is there pricing outside of hourly on-demand dedicated rates, like weekly, monthly rates, or on a sole proprietor level or anything like that?
Well, Andrew, I'm going to break down this question. I don't have any information to let me know where everybody is on their own knowledge and learning here on the call, so I'll do my best just to walk through it, if that's okay by you. I see that you probably are already fairly hands-on, so I'm going to warm up to this. So I do apologize if, bear with me. But VM capacity, a virtual machine, it's like another computer, and EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud, it's a service in Amazon Web Services. And that is a place where you can run a server and run your application on that. You all may have been in a class where you've written something, maybe one of the back-end courses where you've written C# or even full stack JavaScript. I'm trying to think of some of the other languages. I don't believe Java's in rotation, Python as well, but you ultimately can run something on a server inside of Amazon Web Services. That's an EC2 instance. There are many different compute options. EC2 happens to be one of them. EC2's pricing, it has multiple pricing options. There is, of course, on demand. That's going to be your most expensive, where you pay for what you use, and it's billed at a hourly rate. Now, there are ways to optimize that cost. You can, there isn't a personal or a sole proprietor level of pricing. This pricing information you could find on the EC2 site. Let me find that real quick for you. Might be helpful. But EC2 pricing goes into these details. I'll start kind of walking through that. Pricing starts at on demand. That is the default. You can buy reserved instances where you buy them. You basically say, I want a virtual machine, an EC2 instance that runs at always on for a year or 3 years. And by paying for that upfront, you get a bulk discount. And sometimes that can be up to a 70% off versus on demand. That is one big way of saving. And there is spot pricing, where you're taking unused compute capacity that is sold at a discount. But you can configure a spot instance at any time. I apologize. Reserved instance can get up to about 55% off. Spot instances will get you close to about 70% off in some cases, and that's where excess capacity is available. If your workload, if your program that you're running on that EC2 instance can tolerate interruption, meaning it can be started and stopped and not lose information, if it's tolerant to that sort of thing and you're okay with that, you can use a spot pricing model for your EC2 instances. There are savings plans as well if you're choosing to, say, migrate to one of the other compute options from EC2 to, say, containers. Docker may have been mentioned in some of your classes before. We won't go into those details, but it's a container. You can run containers on many different things, and there are, quote, savings plans similar to reserved instances that allow you to convert that same. You get a favorable pricing for you on a longer term, with the ability to convert and use other compute as well. So Andrew, hopefully that helped a little bit with your question there, and I hope that I included the group in that answer. On the screen at the moment, we haven't talked about all of the certifications. Happy to walk through the tree of all 12 that are available on the screen and give you a little excerpt on each one of them. If you would like to learn a little bit more on, like a summary statement of which each exam could look like. Would that be helpful? I see a few thumbs up there. A explosion of a thumbs up there. I'm not sure what that is, but it's majestic. I love it. Well, okay, great. Well, we'll start in the bottom left, and I'll walk up the tree. And this doesn't have to be the path that you take. That's the PDF I sent you, where you can kind of select your own personal certification path based off of where you might want to go. I faintly recall there was a survey or a quiz, an interactive one where you could answer some questions, and it would tell you what role might be best fit for you. I don't have an access to that. I don't have that link handy, but I'll find it and I'll put it on the thread as well. It's a really fun one to help you answer, well, these are all great paths. I don't know what it means. Could I just get some guidance on this? Well, I'll try to find that to help out. But starting at the bottom left, we've talked about the cloud practitioner. I like to say that that's where you learn the words, you can learn the vocabulary, the basics. You aren't getting to the point to where you can converse as much about, say, the AWS cloud, but you're at least learning what the words mean. And when given a light problem, you can maybe pick the right tool. You don't know how to configure that tool just yet, but you know how to pick the right thing. Next up, bottom left, the developer associate. Let me hover as I go along with these. So the developer associate, we mentioned that earlier. That's where you get more in depth about the code. So there are code services. In Code Louisville, you've written code by now, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and probably a backend language has been introduced to you. But this is where you're getting hands-on and happening to write code that integrates with AWS services or configures AWS web services. Next up is the Solution Architect Associate. Associate exams are meant to be someone that has been in the industry or has hands-on experience for about 1 to 3 years in some cases. 1 year is a pretty good benchmark for somebody. If you've got practical experience, you might do favorably on these exams, but you might have some blind spots to fill in, some gaps to fill in that would be exposed through using some practice exams on Skill Builder. But the Solution Architect Associate is going to be where you start designing high-level solutions to basic and intermediate level business problems. You basically know how to pick the right tool. You know how to generally configure it to integrate with another tool and solve a business problem. And then when asked, give me a solution that does meet the requirements, but is the most cost effective, you have enough knowledge to be able to make those trade-off comparisons in your head or be able to know which one might be the more maintainable solution. The SysOp administrator is the one in the bottom left and the bottom right. This is where you're hands-on and you are troubleshooting problems and you are diagnosing problems and remediating problems. So you're the person. I joked whenever I was taking this exam, this is where you learn to become a digital fireman, or where you're on call and you don't know how something works, but you need to know how to troubleshoot it. You need to know how to solve problems, but ultimately configure the solution to fix that problem as well. This comes in line with how to make that thing do more of what it does at a larger scale. But I do joke at times that this is kind of your disaster response opportunity of learning what that's like. Next up, the green one in the second tier bottom left, the DevOps engineer professional. We talked about this one. This is where you automate solutions end to end, where you configure solutions. It is a blend. I would say it sits above the associates, above the developer, and then the sysops associate. So you've got some code experience, you've got some troubleshooting experience, but you go in depth in both areas. So it's really a blend of those, taken even a step further, where you solve even more complex problems, and then also add in the complexity and the mindfulness of security details into the mix. We talked about the solution architect professional earlier on in the certification path mentioned. And this is where you go really in depth on designing solutions to meet large and complex business problems. Now, I see that we're getting close to time. We've got about 8 minutes. I don't expect that we'll get through, we'll take 8 minutes to get through these next 6. So I'll just briefly go through them. One of the most complex exams that I've taken, and one of the areas I was weakest in, but I had a lot of fun learning about and passing, the advanced networking specialty. I refer to this sometimes jokingly as digital plumbing. It is how you connect all of the pipes together for the data to transmit appropriately. You're configuring all of the routing. Joking for the Louisville area, if you've ever sat in traffic in Spaghetti Junction, you've probably questioned why is traffic not moving? That's a networking problem. So if you like that kind of thing and you found yourself venturing into that mode of thought in the Louisville area, advanced networking might hit home with you. Data analytics specialty. Ashley, I believe you asked about this one earlier. Data analytics, that's where you're going to start digging deep into the data, configuring workflows to automate data analytics solutions. Each one of these exams have an exam guide that go into these details, and then you can take free practice question sets, about 10, I believe, on Skill Builder, just to see what it's like, and rather than having to read the full PDF. But that's where you would be getting hands-on with distilling business insights from data, and being able to configure end-to-end data-oriented workloads. Security, we talked about that one. You're going to be securing all of the workloads and integrations between the services and between, say, an existing on-premises that a company might have and AWS Cloud. Top left, SAP on AWS, it's all of the top 6 are specialties. So they go in depth. They're intermediate to advanced in a particular area. SAP on AWS, SAP is an analytics solution that some businesses, even in the Louisville area, use, and it happens to be able to be run in the AWS cloud. So this tests your ability to run, configure, and maintain an SAP analytics workload in AWS and be able to scale it. Database specialty, we were talking about EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. It's a compute service, much like there are many different compute services. There are many different ways to run a database. There are structured, non-structured, all sorts of different database types. How to configure them, scale them, maintain them, choose between them based off of business requirements or your abilities. But the database specialty is where you learn and validate your capabilities of making those selections. And then probably the hot topic that a lot of people are gravitating towards these days in the top right, machine learning. Gen AI, Chat GPT, and so on. I heard David say that one of the upcoming presentations is going to be on prompt engineering, a very deep topic. But inside of machine learning, you learn or you test your abilities to pick the right model to make inferences or basically answer questions with in a way. I'm glossing over some of those details. But with machine learning, you go into depth about model selection, training, tuning, fine-tuning, and so on. So I would say that is a quick survey run through, an a la carte potpourri tour through AWS certifications here. Four minutes to spare. Hopefully all questions are answered, but I am very happy if they're not. I love answering all these questions.
Well, I will mention a couple things while we're wrapping up. If somebody has a question, you can just sort of run me over and ask your question. The recording for this will be shared in Slack, so you will be able to see the recording of the presentation. All the resources that CJ was referring to have already been posted in the thread. If you haven't seen them already, make sure to check those out. Some pretty good stuff in there, some pretty good deals too, if you're looking at taking those certifications. Make sure to fill out the survey that CJ just dropped in the chat. Helps him out a lot. So make sure to fill that out, please.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure to be with you all today. I am really excited to be able to share my passion with you all for upskilling people and for building training. I myself was an engineer, loved training and helping people in Code Louisville, and found a way to do that for my job and still be an engineer. I'm having a blast. I love being able to play digital Legos in AWS Cloud. So I very much welcome any questions that you have. I am in the Code U Slack channel in the workspace. I was a past mentor. I very much hope to be a future mentor. I'm trying to get back to enjoying time with you all, but I do welcome questions, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, CJ. We really appreciate your time. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You too.